Hey everyone, me again. Now we're going to do a short training, I hope it'll be short, on ABC charts and reporting for NOAA. So this is where we talk about what an ABC chart is, what information needs to go in it, and why we're getting you to do them. If you've got any questions, again, the same applies with all our other training. You can always send your questions to Molly or to myself, and I'll have a crack at answering them. So just a reminder again, the 5 behaviours that we're talking about with NOAA that we've got in his behaviour support plan is the PIGA, so the eating the non-food items, smearing feces, the unsafe behaviour that we've talked about before in the wheelchair, which is putting his fingers in the spokes, trying to drag his feet, trying to slide out of the wheelchair, and he might try and lean forward, which makes it unsafe for the tipping. There's also wandering or absconding is a different way of referring to that, and unsafe behaviours, climbing onto furniture and household objects. So they're the 5 we're looking at. That's just a quick reminder. But so why are we looking at those behaviours? That's because when I was doing my functional behaviour assessment with Karen and other stakeholders, so OT, Speechy, all those people, the behaviours that everyone was consistently bringing up as being of concern are those 5. Doesn't mean that NOAA doesn't do other stuff that's a little bit risky and that we need to keep an eye on, but the definition of a behaviour concern is that it's having quite a big impact and can be unsafe for someone in their life. So it's something that we need to support and address. And just remembering, it's not always about trying to teach someone to do something in a new way. It could be about us and our role in ensuring the environment is safe. And for NOAA, that's a lot of the support that he requires, is us doing environmental scans, checking that he's not being unsafe. So we're not necessarily focusing in the short term on teaching him a new way of doing something. That will be our long-term goal. And given that you should have all read the PBS plan, you will know that within there I've got short-term goals and long-term goals. So at the moment, we're talking about short-term goals and the why of the ABCs. So why are we collecting the right data and why is it important? It's important for me to have this data so I can suggest to you the right strategies to help. So behaviour support isn't an exact science in that I know exactly why something is happening, because it's involving a human being, and human beings change throughout the day, between the days, for months, weeks, all that sort of stuff. So what we're doing is an educated guess or a hypothesis as to why we think this behaviour is happening. So if I don't have data, I can't make those hypotheses based on any real facts. It's more supposition or me kind of thinking something's happening, and that's not how we do it. We need to have some data. So I need to be clear on why things are happening, when, with whom, all those sorts of things. But also sometimes we miss when behaviour started. So getting you used to doing ABCs means that your brain starts thinking, hang on a minute, what was happening before then? And you go back and you start thinking, you start to make those connections, and you start thinking about the consequences to it. What happens afterwards that makes it more likely that NOAA will do it or not do it in the future. So this means you're starting to become detectives, and it can be really exciting. So try and see this as I have a really big chance here to make a big impact with my input. And your information is always important to me. So typically when you're looking at an ABC, a lot of people know the ABC part. I'm not going to go too much into the background factors or the setting events. I will mention them. But mostly what I want you to focus on is the ABC, and I'll talk about each one. But I do want you to note, if you do know things that might have happened further away before the actual behavioural incident, it might have impacted on the behaviour. Like, is Noah sick? Did he not sleep well? Was there a whole heap of people at the house the night before that kind of unsettled him? Has mum been sick? Those sorts of things. They are called the setting events. So they're not the thing immediately before the behaviour, but they are things that can influence and make someone more irritable, more impulsive, less concentration, all those sorts of things. And that impacts on your ability to cope with stresses in your life. And then if you're going to exhibit behaviours of concern in response. So it's all related. So I've done a functional behaviour assessment recently, so I think it was December 2024, and I was looking at the data that I had, and I didn't have much at all. So since you guys have taken over, there's no ABC data being filled in at all. So that's a bit of a problem, and I'm not telling you off. I'm just saying we can improve and do better, and that's what it's all about, learning and doing better. So it's my job to make connections between the data and design strategies that means we'll be a bit more successful. So without the data, I can't do that. So this is why it's so important. And it helps me figure out when behaviour is most likely to happen and when it isn't. And we're trying to replicate the days where he's happy, he's feeling well, and these things aren't happening. So we try and have that more often. And it means that we, or me, ask lots of questions to figure all this out. So in the background, I'm asking Karen questions. I'm following up with support coordinator, Molly, or everyone in your agency and different therapists. So all this stuff happens in the background that you may be not aware of. So we're looking at when does it occur, what was happening right before. We just talked about setting events, so the night or even the week or month before that. Is it school holidays? Is it Christmas time? Often things happen around holiday seasons. Who was there? Are there particular times of the day when it happens or particular activities? And how long does it go for? Like, is it only a minute or is it 2 hours? That's important for us to know. And how intense does it get? So intensity can be a hard one. It's often a bit subjective, so it's your personal opinion of how intense it is. But we could even design rating systems so you could do it between 1 and 5. 5 is, physical injury, required hospitalisation, and downwards. There's different ways you can do that. So we can talk about that as a team. And what are you doing or people around Noah doing that makes it more or less likely to happen? And what does he get out of it? So what's the function? Is he trying to communicate he needs to leave, like he wants to escape the situation? Is he trying to communicate he wants that thing? Is he trying to communicate his sensory system's overwhelmed and it's a bit much? So there's all different functions about that. And we've done that in his PBS training. So the difference between incident reports and ABCs. So for me, as far as I'm concerned, the ABCs are the ones I want you to do for me. The incident reports are your internal kind of systems that you have to do within your agency. There's still important information that for me to look at, and I do ask that they're sent to me. But they're traditionally worded quite negatively, and they're focused on recording what went wrong. So it's stuff about, does staff need more training? Does it need to be 2-to-1 instead of 1-to-1? All that sort of stuff. So it's kind of like systems based. ABCs is more the guts, the meat of it as to why it's happening. So that's why I'm asking you to make sure you think about ABCs being really important. So antecedents are the things you might have heard another name for it as triggers. So they're the action or the event that occurred before a behaviour took place. So before, what happened? Behaviour is common sense. It's a description of what it looked like. So when you're doing an ABC, it's not things like, oh, he went off or he was really upset. That doesn't really mean anything to me. Like going off or being upset could mean different things to you versus what it means to me. So it's descriptive information. He cried for 5 minutes, hit his hand into the wall, something like that. So, and you're wanting to talk again, how I spoke about before, about how long it goes for and how intense it is. And again, the consequences is what happened right after. Other things that I haven't mentioned about setting events is medication can be a big one. The big ones are lack of sleep and being sick, but I've talked to you about that. Again, I think that's a repeat. So examples of antecedents, surprisingly, praise can be a trigger to behaviour. So if you've got a child who's not used to being praised, that could be feeling really uncomfortable for them. Now, that's not the case for Noah. He really loves social engagement. I encourage you to pause right here, take a bit of time to read these because I'm not going to go through all of them. These are just common examples of what could be considered a trigger. And they're really useful to know, even not necessarily with Noah. It could be anyone that you're working with or even in your family. So routine is a big one. Being told no, that's also a common one. Consequences, they either maintain, so they keep the behaviour happening, they decrease the behaviour from happening, or they increase it. So there's all these words like negative and positive reinforcement. You don't really need to know those terms. It's more about, is this going to make it more likely that the behaviour will happen, or will it decrease it? And they're the things we need to know. So I've just included a few examples of potential consequences, and this is the information I'll be wanting you to write in there. So gave him reassurance, explained to him why he couldn't have it, and then gave him another activity to do. So it's more that not saying, oh, I just let him go. It's like putting a bit more information into it so we know whether it was successful or not. These are just some examples of the consequences. Preferred you not to be ignoring Noah because he's trying to communicate something with his behaviour, so it should be more about stepping in and supporting him. I'm not saying all of these are correct responses. I'm saying this is sometimes what typical consequences are to behaviour, so then they're not all good ones. So I think I just alluded to that before around describing the behaviours. These are kind of ideas to keep in your mind. Be clear, be specific, describe exactly what it looks like, sounded like, felt like. No emotional prejudice. So things like he just did it to annoy me. He deliberately did it. All those kind of comments don't go in ABCs. They are your opinion. They come from your values base, and they're not a really realistic or fair way of viewing Noah. When we think about all the behaviours that he's doing as a way of communicating his distress, his dysregulation, or his need for something. So that's on us to provide that to him. So let's try not use that negatively worded language. And be clear with your writing so that anyone could read the description and know what they're looking for. So if I handed the behavioural description to anyone on the street and said, go look at Noah and tell me when you see this, it should be clear enough for them to be able to tell me each time that they see that behaviour. So the benefits of ABCs, it allows me to analyse the circumstances that are occurring and the consequences. And like I said, the behaviour and the strategies. And that's important because we're trying to figure out the underlying reason and address that so that Noah doesn't have to do unsafe behaviours to get his needs met. So I think that's really important to consider. We can see patterns. We can think of the context, for example, like being hungry or tired, when it's most likely to happen. And here's another place where I would encourage you to pause. So these are not perfect examples. What they are is some examples of better ABCs, but not the best. So I would encourage you to read this and think, okay, well, I could have done that better. I could have written more about that. So when I'm doing other ABC training, I will get a group together and we'll be talking about each one of these and unpacking them. And we will give an example of a behavioural incident and get them to complete an ABC based on that information. So I'm not going to do that to you today, but we might do it in the future. So again, pause, have a read, think about it, see what it means to you, and do some reflection on it. It's another one. Again, pause this slide, go through it together. But what we're looking at is an example and then antecedents, consequence recording. It's not always around lots of information. It's just being concise and clear with the information that you're providing. This is an example of an old school ABC chart, so low tech on paper, people write on it. It works just as well as QR codes and all that sort of stuff. In fact, sometimes this works better. The only problem with it, it's harder to share the information, so people are required to scan it, which is why people have moved to QR codes to try and make it easier. But exactly this: date, time, what you were doing, the people that were there and where you were, then the antecedent, the behaviour consequences. And this one, we've got an extra column, which is for you to write possible functions. So this might be something we look at implementing. So I do already have the QR code in place, like I said. Happy to edit it. We can all look at that together moving forward to see whether we need to change what's in place already. So this is just a very quick summary about the kind of key functions of behaviour, and the acronym they use is SEAT. So sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. Sensory could be an internal sensory dysregulation. I'm getting too stimulated. I'm not stimulated enough. I want to touch that. I want to feel it. I want to mouth it. I want to have a good time with it. Escape is it's too much. I need to get away either from a request, a person, a situation, or a sensory feeling. Attention. And now I don't like you saying he's doing it for attention. What it means is social connection. I need you to help me feel good right now. And I need your assistance to help me regulate it. It's too much. Or I need a bit more affection. That's all that sort of thing. Tangible means getting something, an item, an activity, person to come towards them. So again, just try and remember this acronym of SEAT, and it'll help you think when you're writing your ABCs, think about the function in your head. Why do you think Noah was doing what he was doing? So this is the activity that I was talking about that we would normally do in a group. I'm just going to leave it here, and if you know, please, I would love it if you did this yourself and just thought about it. I will be sharing these slides because I think my my head's in the way of some of the writing, but I will be sharing them with the team, so you'll be able to get these in a PowerPoint presentation. So just pause, have a read of it, and think of how you would write an ABC chart for me in this kind of chart. Just remembering they're not an incident report. That's your internal organisational requirement. They are charts that guide PBS, positive behaviour support, and they're extremely important. They find patterns. They're not used on their own. I do interviews, I meet with people, I do trainings, I do lots of stuff. And like I said, they can help us with strategies. So thinking about helpful questions to consider when you're doing this is like, does the behaviour occur at similar times of the day? Is there a particular trigger, particular people, locations? What behaviour would you like to see instead? Like if he's being unsafe, how would you like Noah to be behaving in that situation? And do you need any support to manage that behaviour? Because that's where I come in, and Karen's there to support you guys too. You know, she's the expert in Noah, not me. So we've got to keep that in mind too. So I whizzed through that because I'm very aware of trying to keep these little training sessions quite short. So again, if you've got any questions, thoughts, I love thoughts. They don't even have to be questions. They could be your opinion. And, you know, I found that interesting. I didn't find that interesting. Please let Molly know and she can share that with me. But really, thank you for your time. And we'll keep working on this together. Thanks, guys.